Welcome to lesson 11. So this lesson for everybody, this is huge. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest lessons in this course. It certainly is the biggest lesson to date. And it's big because we attach a lot of meanings to words. And so, you're going to see in this material, think words like shadow work and, wounding. And, because we are, of course, in these physical bodies and we learn through experience, but we attach words to everything. Those are not words that come with a lot of love and acceptance. And so we oftentimes think shadow bad, wounding bad. And that is really what oneness, that's really what this journey is about, is bringing the wholeness back to yourself. There's a term in our business called it's called fragmentation. And that is really the exercise of cutting off or suppressing a part of you that is perceived bad or unwanted or unloved, as a method, as a defense mechanism, as a way of coping. And when you are in touch with your higher self and God, source, creator, they only see you one way, and that is perfect, exactly as you are. That is, everything that has happened is exactly as it's supposed to be. It's not until we get down here and receive the programming of duality, of polarity, of good, bad, right, wrong, that we get into this fragmented state, that we get into this self-loathing state, that we decide parts of us are unwanted. And that's not the case at all. Unconditional love is unconditional. That means it doesn't matter. And that is how the creator, that is how the extension, your higher self, your soul self, your divine self sees you. And that's what the journey is about. That's what the purpose of being on earth is about, is returning to that oneness, returning to that wholeness, going through and experiencing the contrast and recognizing that it is okay exactly as it is, okay? That you've done nothing wrong. You've just experienced, you've co-created, you've learned, you've expressed opportunities. Nothing is wrong and nothing is on accident. So, let's go ahead and release the label or the stigma that we attach to shadow work, and release the stigma we have attached to wounding. And really, that's what this is about, is embracing those sides of ourselves that make us who we are. We wouldn't be in this situation, in this position, in this knowing, in this understanding, in this growth and expansion without those experiences and opportunities. And so it's about finding a way to love those parts in spite of what you've been programmed to believe about them, because the true self loves all of you. And that's where we want to get, is where you're in that alignment of loving all of you and seeing those things as beautiful parts of you instead of perceived unwanted parts of you. So, if we look at the worksheet here, plain and simple, healing is just simply creating new beliefs. Okay? And so a lot of times, especially in this work, people will ask, well, why do we need to go to the root cause if I just need to have a new belief about it? And it's because the root cause is generally hiding in the subconscious. Now, hiding doesn't mean, subconscious doesn't mean we don't have control over it. A lot of speakers and teachers don't like to use the subconscious because it does imply a perception of, or a feeling of, lack of control over healing it, and that's not true at all. It is subconscious because we're not thinking about it all the time, but it's an embedded belief that does carry an energetic charge. Okay, so could you manifest without going into the core healing? Yeah, people do it all the time, but that's a masculine energy. Okay, remember, we're made up of both masculine and feminine. And if we're constantly in the masculine energy, we're suppressing the feminine side, and that's creating a disconnect in itself. Okay? We do live in a masculine world, and most of what we're taught and most of how we are programmed to manifest or to make things happen is through effort. You know, work hard, play hard, do this, do that, you know, action. So it is possible to constantly be mindful of your thoughts, monitoring what you're thinking, constantly taking the action of writing out new information or new affirmations, you know, to try to rewire the brain, constantly working on connection to high vibration beliefs, okay, which requires action on a regular basis. And a lot of what that action oriented work has to do is counterbalance or counteract the hidden subconscious beliefs. And so if you don't even know what it is that's there, you can't fix it. So how do you know you're actually, you know, you're making the process more effort-based because you're constantly having to be aware of these things. Whereas if you go into the subconscious, to the root of it, heal it and replace it with something new, then it just is. You're not having to think about it. You're not having to work around it. You're not having to look for it. It's just the natural state, okay? It's just the natural thought, the natural belief that gets planted in the subconscious. And remember, the subconscious mind doesn't care what's there. It takes whatever shows up, okay? So just like that fear-based belief got planted there, you can just as easily plant a love-based belief. But you can't do that if you don't know what's there. That's why this shadow work becomes crucial, because we've got to go in and identify where these things are coming from. Okay, so the shadow work. Let's look at the benefits of shadow work. So it goes like this. If we are ashamed of the dark side, then that's by, definition of shame, casting more shadow or darkness upon it, okay? If we allow the dark side, okay, to be, if we just accept it and say, hey, this is part of the process. We're supposed to have overcome these wounds. We're supposed to be challenged with these things, okay? It's what makes us. It's part of the journey, okay? You don't come to Earth to live this beautifully planned out, or at least up until now, this beautifully planned out life. You're supposed to encounter the contrast, okay? So it's accepting it as a beautiful part of yourself. When you do that, you shine light. Acceptance is light. Acceptance is love. Okay, shame is dark. Shame is shadow. So when we have these parts of us and we bring it in and say, gosh, thank you for being there. Thank you for that opportunity. I'm so glad you're here. Let's shine some light on you. We want to love that part of you, because the Creator does, higher self does. It's only the ego that doesn't, okay? Everything else is attached to love. It's only the ego that's stopping it. It's only the ego that's living in that fear. And the ego is false, okay? That fear is false evidence appearing real, okay? That's only from that one little tiny aspect of ourselves, the smallest aspect of ourselves that's keeping us in the fear. The much bigger, more powerful, more beautiful part of it is the light side of things, who we really are. When we illuminate the darkness disappears. Okay, so it's about loving the parts of ourselves that we have pushed away. And sometimes people don't even realize Because again, it's living in the subconscious. You may not even know what part you've pushed away. You may not even be aware of it because you just think, well, that's just me. That's just how I've always thought. That's just how I've always lived. You're not even recognizing that there's a shadow aspect of it that needs to be loved and nurtured and accepted. Okay? So here's what's really powerful about this shadow work is when we can integrate the shadow self, meaning we bring, instead of pushing it away and being ashamed of it or feeling guilt about it, when we integrate it, when we bring it in and accept it and love it and nurture it, it actually brings freedom. That's why this course is called 4 Weeks to Freedom, because we want to free ourselves of the shackles and the chains of guilt. We want to free ourselves of the chains of fear, of the perceived ugliness of that. When the truth is, our divine true self wants to love that part of us because we experienced that contrast for growth. We experienced that contrast for expansion. Okay? Shadow work can be the greatest ally on this journey. You know, it's like you cannot become, a lot of people say, well, I don't judge other people. I call bull. If you're judging yourself, then you're judging other people. Okay? So in order to become a truly non-judgmental person, you see, when you judge another, it's simply because you are in the practice of judging yourself. Of course that's going to come on the outside because you're judging on the inside. Okay, until we integrate the shadow side of ourselves. See, when you can look at yourself and all the broken pieces of yourself and bring it in and love it in, every time you look at another broken person, you're going to look at them with the same loving eyes. But until you learn to love your broken parts, you most certainly can't love anyone else's broken parts. That's why humans practice on a regular basis conditional love. If you truly want to be in a space of unconditional love, you have to love all of the broken parts of yourself, all of those pushed away, fragmented sides of yourself, and step into unconditional love for you, and that can then be projected out. When we illuminate conditional love and bring it into unconditional love, we can then illuminate others with that same beautiful love and light energy. So in order to raise the vibration, I mean, this is how we are going to cure everything that we perceive to be negative on this planet. There's only one way to eliminate darkness, and that is to illuminate it. So if you want to help others, illuminate yourself. When you do that, you spread that love onto them. Then they can become illuminated. Then they spread that love onto someone else, etc., etc. It's all energy, it's all vibration, and we're all working together to raise the vibration of love on this planet. Starts with you, always. All right, so the truth is, enlightenment isn't about beliefs. Actually, true enlightenment doesn't require any beliefs. True enlightenment is knowing. True enlightenment is divine connection. It's not about believing, well, I love this part of me, I don't love that part of me. It's not about any of it. It's about true connection to your source. Okay? Knowing that you are a divine being. Knowing that you came here to experience contrast. Knowing that everything is just exactly perfect, exactly as it is. That kind of a knowing is enlightenment. That kind of knowing is non-judgment, it's unconditional love, and it is the allowing of things to be. And that, if you think about the biggest challenge we face is, well, I don't want things to be that way. Well, that doesn't feel good to me. Well, I don't like that. It all comes here, right here. when you can start accepting and allowing and loving all of the broken pieces within, you'll never see the broken pieces outside. As above, so below. As within is so without. Loving the brokenness inside and accepting it and just allowing it to be, knowing that it's all exactly perfect, will allow you to project that same energy outside. You'll start to see everything differently. But you got to start here. Because remember, we don't get what we want, we get what we believe. Okay? If you believe that the world is broken, it's because you believe that you're broken. I mean, it just, that's the way it is. It's called the law because it's the law. It's not called, oh, some perhaps idea. It's called the law, right? Okay. So let's talk about the steps to healing next, all right? So really and truly, it's actually quite easy once we accept the basic concepts and we get into the mental space to be ready to do the work, okay? So I had one of the biggest epiphanies on this journey. I mean, I've had several really big epiphanies on this journey. But one of the probably the biggest epiphanies I've had is in relationship to what we're going to talk about next. And because I followed, as you noticed in the intro, I followed Abraham Hicks, who is a great channeler and beautiful messages of love and unity. And one of the main messages of Abraham is you don't need to go back and fix what was. You just need to start from where you are and figure out where you want to go. And that, again, we talked about that in a very masculine-based world. That is an option. You can do that. But it will require constant efforting, constant monitorings, constant knowing of what you're thinking and where it's coming from and so forth. That's a lot of energy, and a lot of people just can't keep up with that energy on a regular basis. So they have spurts of manifestation and then spurts of non-manifestation. And so when I heard this next thought and idea, it really clicked in for me that we absolutely do need to go back to where the root cause is, heal it, and then establish the new belief. And, it's again, you can't transform the belief until you know where it is. So here's the idea, okay? The inner child, your inner child is very much real and alive, because your inner child is the essence of the programming. Most of all the beliefs, if not, I'm just going to go ahead and say all of your programming happens up until age 7 or 8. And most of it goes between the ages of 2 or 3, because that's when you're really conscious of, what's happening. You might be doing some programming at 9 months based on what you're watching, because, babies tend to mimic. But most of the main wounding or opportunity for programming is going to happen, between 2 and say 7 or 8 is the theta state of the brain. We already talked about this. That child, that inner child, if you just want to call, say, the inner child, maybe even the subconscious mind or the ego, where this wounding takes place, is always going to be in the mind of a child, okay? That child is the one that experienced the event, so it's the child that needs to experience the closure and the forgiveness. But what happens? What happens is we grow up and we keep repeating these patterns based on beliefs until we get to a place as an adult where we can look back and say, well, my dad had a rough life, my dad was an alcoholic, I get it, etc., etc. And so as an adult, from an adult perspective, we rationalize and forgive the events, but that inner child inside of us that's very real has never had that opportunity to find closure or forgiveness or to understand why this happened, and then to be comforted and nurtured and receive love about the event. And I thought, what an epiphany. It's the inner child that needs the forgiveness, not the adult perspective. Okay? Mind blown. I mean, seriously, mind blown. You know, and so here's the thing. I can assure you the challenges that you're facing right now have nothing to do with what happened last week, last month, last year, when you were 16, 18, 21. All of those things that you experienced, you had to draw into your life because of the beliefs that were set and embedded when you were a child. And because we know the universe, our beliefs, you know, create the actions and the vibration. So the universe is always going to show up with the evidence that you're asking for. The evidence, the matching of vibrations, the evidence to match the beliefs that you have. So what you experienced at 16 was not your initial wounding. What you experienced at 21 was not your initial wounding. It came from when you were a child. And I'll just give you a personal experience, because in this particular lifetime, the contrast that I've signed up to experience has not been nearly as traumatic as the contrast that I might have experienced in some previous lives. So let's take the abandonment issue, the rejection abandonment issue that I have been working on healing. When my dad was, when I was little, my dad was in the Navy. And he obviously would go off on the tours and on the cruises for months, sometimes years at a time, or never longer really than 12 months. And, you know, of course, I would miss him when he would come back. He would be full beard, and it would scare me, right? And so I have this wound of, you know, men aren't reliable. They leave, and you get abandoned. And then when they come back, they're scary. They look different. This isn't good. And then you're upset, and you're told not to be upset, or they laugh at you because you being upset at the way that they look is funny to them, which we've all laughed at situations when, you know, the man shaves the beard and the child is like, ah! That child is going to have that wound to deal with later on if they're not nurtured and loved through it, you know, given the opportunity to heal from that experience. And so I vividly remember being on the bed with my mom doing the tapes and recording. And I may have told this story already, but bear with me. Doing the recordings and just crying and missing my dad and wondering why couldn't he be there? Now, as an adult, obviously it makes sense. He was working. He was supporting his family. He was going to, you know, serve the country. But as a 3-year-old, am I supposed to understand that? As a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old, am I supposed to understand why my dad's been gone for 8, 9, 10 months? Why I miss him so much? Why I can't play with him? Why when he comes back, he looks like this different person? Of course, as a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, that wounding, I'm allowed to be hurt and upset about that. And so my adult perspective, you know, is able to look back at that and rationalize it, but my 3 and 4-year-old self is not. And so that's why I need to go in with my 3-year-old self, confront the issue, which we'll go through in another video. In fact, the video after this will do this particular childhood wounding exercise where anything that happened to you, we can go and recall it, look at it, address it, and heal it. But I have every right as a 3 and a 4-year-old to be really upset and hurt and wounded by that experience. And yes, it's not as severe or as traumatic as, you know, having your dad or your mom leave or die or something, you know, a brother pass away or a sister or something like that. But as a 3 or 4-year-old, again, we're not in competition for who's got the most trauma. It still was very wounding to me. So the child version of me needs this healing. And once that healing can take place and that 4-year-old feels safe again, what will the new belief be? I am safe, I am worthy, I am lovable, all of those beautiful things, okay? So let's look at the steps required to change a belief. The best part about this is that the majority of the work is simply in the awareness. When you are aware of the situation without judgment of, remember, the whole idea is to be accepting and allowing of the contrast, because that's what taught us and made us who we are. So we're not trying to create shadow for this anymore. We want to illuminate it. We want to allow it, love it, and nurture it. So the awareness of the wound, okay, this is a pattern. I've been projecting fear of abandonment and rejection. That's been a pattern. That's a core wound. As a result of that, it's made me pretty self-sufficient. And so if I look at it from that perspective, I can love that side of me and say, oh, well, you know what? That fear is not serving me in that capacity anymore. I am now self-sufficient. And so it's not serving me to be in a pattern of fear of abandonment or rejection. So I now need to integrate that part, nurture that, heal it, love that part of me, illuminate it, and create a new belief based in love. Do you see how this works? So awareness of it without judging it to be bad already shifts the vibration without any new belief. Okay, so that's why it's 80% of the work is just being aware of what's going on. So you've got your different areas where the awareness needs to take place. Is it something from the past life where you know the fear, but you don't really have a memory or an experience to explain it? Okay, to access the past life, and number 2, you would perform a past life regression or do a past life reading to access and look at your Akashic records. Is it ancestral, where you see the pattern happening? Well, my mom had the same problem, and her mom had the same problem, and her mom had the same problem. Okay, that's an ancestral situation where we would, again, want to go in and look at the lineage and access the Akashic records and identify the pattern. Just being aware, bring the awareness to it. Then you look at the childhood, where there's an actual event that and a memory attached to the event. Again, those memories create also the mental memories also create an emotional memory in your energetic field. And so a lot of times that's why people don't want to think about the past, because you get that emotional, physical reaction to it, because that emotion gets stored in your memory energetic field, just like your mental image does. It gets attached to you emotionally, physically as well. That's why it can be painful to bring these memories up. You're not experiencing that anymore, but the memory of it, the pain of it comes with the memory, and that's why the tears start flowing, because they're both attached. That's why it's important to clear these out. Okay, so we can do either an early child regression reading, we can do the shadow work exercise that you guys just did, and the memory recall exercise. And then, of course, the societal things, this is, of course, attached to an event and a memory that usually can, if it's societal, you probably, unless you've, trapped it into a space where, it was very traumatic and you just, pushed it down so far, usually you can easily access a memory attached to a societal event as well. So that's step 1 and 2, and then step 3 is to create a new belief in love, and just then practicing an integration. And this is the smaller part of the process, because once you've accepted it, become aware of it, and also created the ability to be aware of it without judgment, by knowing why it's there, allowing it to be, then the 20% part is a lot simpler, because it's just then about finding a better feeling thought that aligns with love, And that is based in trust. And what that means is that you're saying or believing something that you trust. So you can't go from, I have a crappy life to I have a great life, but you might be able to release the crappy life to my life is getting better. I can see beauty in a lot of things now. I can see things a lot differently than I did before. So you're moving up that vibrational ladder until, and sometimes it's really just about letting that energy release. It can take a couple of weeks. Sometimes you're working with the moon energy. It just depends each person on how embedded that belief is and how much wounding was actually there and needs to be cleared. As you shift to the new belief, law of attraction never lets you down, new evidence will start to show up. Because your mind, your belief has shifted, that creates a different energy vibration, and the universe will respond with evidence to that belief. Isn't that a beautiful thing? So as you start practicing the new belief, it will become more and more ingrained and more trusted as the evidence builds, so that the belief becomes more and more natural, less having to think about it and more just automatic, because the evidence will support it. Isn't that a beautiful thing? Oh, this is a lot of material. This is a lot of information. A lot of us might be struggling with some of these exercises, and that's okay. It's important that we take our time with it. We don't rush anything. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you have to practice forgiveness. You do things as you're ready for it, okay? Because trying to force it is not the natural flow. Let it happen organically. The fact that you're in this course and that you're finding this information generally will mean that you're ready to at least explore it. But if you need help, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. I'm available for one-on-one sessions. You can go to my website and check these things out. This is the bigger part of what my work is about, is helping people work through this wounding. This is a bigger part of the soul, intuitive soul coaching that I'm going to be doing. So don't feel bad if you need additional help. That's what I'm here for. That's what this integration is all about. Okay. Trust me, I did not do any of this. Well, I won't say any. I did not do a majority of this on my own. I have had mentors and coaches and people helping me along the way, still do. In fact, I just got through a big energy crunch the other day, and I'm going to contact my mentor, Natalie, and have her work with me through a little bit deeper than what I think I got. Simply because that's what the purpose of this work is get it in there and get all of it. So don't feel bad if you do need some extra help. Just contact me and we'll set up a session. And there will be, of course, for you guys, there will be a discount on the rates. So just contact me for that information. Share what you're comfortable with on Facebook. And in the group. I'm not going to ever ask anyone to share something that they're not comfortable with. And if you are ready to access a childhood wound and go through the process of having the inner child, the 3-year-old or 5-year-old version of you, receive the love and nurturing and healing that your inner child needs, then go ahead to the next video, the childhood wounding exercise, and go through the process. It's a recorded sort of meditation type video that will help you work through the process. And you can access this for every wound, every memory, everything you want to go through. If you want the past life or the ancestral stuff, I'm not going to be making videos for this course on that. We can do that separately in a private session. And we can also do this childhood wounding in a private session as well, if you're more comfortable with that. But I wanted to make this as beneficial to you and truly help you receive as much freedom as possible in this course. And so that's why I'm going to offer this particular video as part of it. So Anyway, I'm going to stop now and just reach out if you need help. I'm looking forward to hearing all of your beautiful healing experiences, and I will see you in the next video.